Got a great show lined up for you here on Retiring Well. We're going to be starting off with inflation. What impact is that going to have on your retirement plan as you look ahead the next 20, 30, 40 years? How to meet your income needs in retirement. A lot of times people are so used to collecting that paycheck during their working years, but how do you then transition to generating an income from your portfolio? 13 frequently asked questions of advisors, so you want to stay tuned and hear about those. And lastly, when can I retire? That's something everybody wants to know and talk more about, so stay tuned as we've got all that and more coming up on Retiring Well.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
All right, let's talk about inflation and what that might mean to you. So again, inflation, you're going to be looking at a scenario where there's a high demand for goods with a low supply. So there's also going to be too much money chasing, say, too few of goods or services. So you're going to have an inflation or that price increase. So ultimately, the question is, who gets hurt the most by inflation? It's typically going to be those people that are living paycheck to paycheck and ultimately spending a bulk of their money. The biggest areas typically hurt are going to be, say, energy is usually one of the leaders out there. Food, housing are other areas that obviously those items that you need for daily living. But again, it's those folks that are ultimately not setting money aside into savings and trying to get by on what they have that are going to feel it the worst. So if people don't have that additional, say, discretionary income, then they aren't going to be able to spend quite as freely. They're not going to be able to save money. And so that's ultimately going to drive up that inflationary factor. And eventually when that happens and people aren't spending as much money or spending it quite as freely, then you're going to start to see that hurt some of the corporations. And they want to sell you those goods, but if you're not out there spending that money, then that's going to have an impact. Or if you think of, say, some of those service industries such as like the restaurant or travel industry, we saw that back in March of 2020, everything sort of shut down. So you saw those restaurants and travel industry essentially go to nothing, and then now you're experiencing that drive of prices back up. And with that being said, some inflation is going to be good. Maybe you invested in real estate several years ago, and you've had the benefit of seeing those rising real estate costs, or perhaps you bought a vehicle and you saw that price go up. Now the challenge might be if you're looking to purchase a vehicle, but that's where you start to see some of those values increase. The Federal Reserve ultimately wants to keep unemployment at a low, as well as inflation in check. Usually their target for inflation is approximately 2%. In higher inflationary times, you may have higher manufacturing costs or higher wages, higher labor costs happening. So ultimately, again, going to drive up those prices. So you want to be aware, though, of what you call your real return on your money, such as your cash. So what are you doing with that to try and get some earnings? If you're not making the money sitting in a bank account, are there better opportunities for you to try to keep up with inflation so that you're not effectively losing money by not earning anything on that? So again, all the important areas that you want to consider, and we'd love the opportunity to sit down with you and discuss this in greater detail.
Inflation, prices are going up. You're at the grocery store, you're at the gas station, and it just costs more. You know, I recently had a client, or a potential client rather, come into the Cadillac office, and as we were getting to know each other, I just said, what are some of your concerns? And they said, my number one concern is inflation. Here I have saved up all this money, I'm worrying about the buying power of it. And I said, okay, you know, that's common, right? I mean, has inflation peaked? Is inflation just getting started? Is it going to go back down? Who knows? But what we get to do is plan for it. And so over some subsequent meetings, we were able to build out an income plan. We were able to use an inflation kicker on that income plan to pretend that we're just going to keep spending more and more money. The other thing that we were able to do is put purpose behind the positions that they had in their portfolio. What I mean by that is they had some rental income. Hey, that might be a good hedge against inflation. They had some different stocks that we were putting in place on purpose, understanding the risk, but to hedge against that potential inflation. And so after you got to see all of that, the client that came in with a fear got to leave with an understanding, and that's powerful. I know you had a story too, Nick, about that.
I think, you mentioned they're seeing what inflation really looks like, and we have a software program that allows you to see that. Recently over in the Gaylord office, we had a couple come in and their main question, well, what could inflation possibly look like 20 years down the road? And we were able to input their income information and show, based on, okay, an average rate of X per inflation, that your $6,000 a month need in expenses right now grows to over $11,000 some 20 years from now. Now, are they going to really need $11,000 a month at age 85? Who knows, right? It depends on what bread and milk is going to cost at that point in time. Now, oftentimes we've seen, you know what, at age 85 or in the early 80s, your lifestyle changes, right? You're not going out spending as much money and so forth. So it does kind of help inflation, but it doesn't offset it totally. So you just got to plan for that. And it's very valuable to be able to see what inflation could possibly look like. So hopefully you found that very valuable. Stay tuned. We're going to be talking about how your income is affected in retirement and frequently asked questions.
Living life isn't always easy. It puts up challenges and obstacles you'll have to overcome. There are responsibilities. You put in effort to provide and take care of your family, and to save and invest, to balance work and life. Planning is the first step to succeeding. Plan to retire well.
Are you retired or approaching retirement in the next 5 to 10 years? Join the Centennial Wealth Advisory team for an exciting presentation with complimentary gourmet dinner and learn essential financial strategies for a comfortable retirement. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Call 888-608-5825.
Let's talk about how to meet your income needs in retirement. Now, the first thing that we have to do when we do this is, what needs do you have? It's oftentimes maybe 9 out of 10 folks that come in for the first time and want to talk about retirement planning with us don't know what they need in retirement. Simply a lot of times, what is the budget, if you will? I seem to find that most people don't per se live life on a budget, and that's great. Maybe you have enough income and you're fortunate enough to be having savings and all that sort of stuff, so you haven't per se had to live on a budget. Probably internally you kind of have one, but you're not saying, you're not writing it out, or you're not divvying it up per se every month or paycheck or whatever it may be. But we need to kind of consider this when we're heading into retirement. What do you think you're going to need to live on to pay the bills and keep the lights on and do the things you want to do in retirement? So once we have that number in place, that budgetary number for expenses, how are we going to get there? Are we going to have enough to get to where we want to be? First, what do we know is going to come in? Think like pensions, Social Securities. Maybe you're fortunate enough to have like royalties off an old oil situation, rents, some maybe annuities can be kind of a guaranteed source, stuff like that. So what do we know is going to come in? And then what is our shortfall? What is the difference between what we know and what do we need? And then that's where we have to look at our portfolio, our retirement savings, whether that's a 401k, IRAs, or any of those different savings vehicles. Is now, what is that amount we have there, and what can that produces income. Now then, so we have to consider withdrawal rates and, do you want to leave money behind, and are there other bigger purchases coming along that we have to plan for? So at the end of the day, how are we going to meet the income needs in retirement? Step one, know what the income you need is. Two, what do you know is going to come in? And finally, three, what can that portfolio produce comfortably depending upon your situation that you want to have? Oftentimes, we see people jumping the gun a little bit on this step in their life where they come in, hey, I retired last week, what do I do? Have these conversations in advance. Have something, this is where you set goals and want to work towards so that you can feel confident heading into retirement that you have a plan and that you're not going to have a situation where you outlive your money. People's number one fear when they were polled a few years ago was actually running out of money and not dying. So make sure you have a situation to do that. You may think you have enough, but when you start drawing for that and you have to plan, maybe 20, 30 years or more that your retirement may exist, saving your savings last that long and do the things you want to do. Also, final thing I'll say on this is oftentimes people underestimate their spending in retirement. You now have all this time and you have all these dreams, and maybe it's travel or grandkids. Make sure you add those things into your budget so you can plan to retire well.
Every success story starts with a plan. The success of your retirement depends on a solid financial plan. If you are nearing retirement or already retired, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. There is no cost and no obligation, and dinner is on us. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial professionals, specializing in retirement planning, serving all of northern Michigan, with offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. Our presentation includes: is your retirement prepared for inflation? Do you know the true risk of your investments? What happens to your assets when you pass away? Do you have a tax plan? How does your income affect health insurance costs? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 to register and choose the date and location that works best for you. Tuesday, June 14th at Lakeside Charlie's in Cadillac, or Thursday, June 16th at the Otsego Resort in Gaylord. The live event starts at 6 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow, but seating is limited and tends to fill quickly. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. Don't miss this important live event to help you plan to retire well. Call 888-608-5825 today.
At Centennial Wealth Advisory, we take a holistic approach to your retirement planning. So it's not just looking at what your investments are, but what is that long-term income plan for the next 30, 40 years of your retirement? What about taxes and what role they play in your retirement plan? Estate planning, what about life insurance, health insurance planning, all key areas to consider when looking at your retirement. So please visit our website or call the number on the screen. We'd love the opportunity to sit down with you for a no-cost, no-obligation visit.
In today's day and age, with a longer lifespan, you're more likely to encounter both good and bad market performance. For that reason, when planning for retirement, it's increasingly important to seek guidance from a financial advisor who can help you structure an income strategy that reflects your financial situation, risk tolerance, and investment objectives. You don't want just any advice, but objective financial advice. With so much at stake, it's important that you feel you can trust a financial advisor to consider a wide variety of possible solutions, including both investment and insurance products. Here at Centennial Wealth Advisory, we're not beholden to any certain investment tools or vehicles. We're independent. We can offer a wide variety of investment tools that meet your needs. So please, if you have any questions or you want to schedule an initial consultation, don't hesitate to give us a call at the number on the screen. We're happy to help in any way that we can.
So U.S. News and World Report came out with 13 frequently asked questions of advisors. So I'd like to run through those with you, starting with the first of how do I retire? And how do you transition from having a paycheck to ultimately using your retirement savings to cover your income needs? Second question, when can I retire? You know, ultimately it depends on, can you afford it? Do you essentially have enough assets to generate an income stream to cover those expenses for the remainder of your life, or if you're married, both your life and your spouse's life? Number three, how much money do I need? Well, ultimately that depends on your lifestyle. I've come across over the past 17 years here working at Centennial Wealth Advisory where I've come across situations where people may have a significant amount of assets, but they are spending so much that they may not be able to retire. So these top three are essentially based on income planning. Number four, how much will I spend in retirement? Well, that's something for you to determine, but along with that, we factor in what's the inflationary impact of those dollars over time. Number five, should I retire early? Well, you know, you might be in a situation where you're fortunate enough you could potentially retire early. You'd want to factor in Social Security. Should you start that perhaps at age 62? Leading into number six, when should I take Social Security? Ultimately, can you afford to delay your Social Security to full retirement age or perhaps to age 70? That ultimately might benefit a surviving spouse scenario where one spouse passes and the surviving spouse keeps the higher of the two benefits. Number seven, how do I apply for Social Security? Well, you've got SSA.gov is a natural way to go online, or you've got different local offices to talk to. Number eight, how much will I pay in taxes? You need to look at your combination of IRAs, Roth IRAs, what after-tax assets you have, and how you're going to draw income and ultimately then what taxes you'll pay. Number nine, pension lump sum or an annuity. This is an area where if you're in a situation like that, we definitely have to run a detailed analysis to better determine what the best way to handle that would be. Number 10, how do I afford medical expenses in retirement? So, you know, perhaps with that, do you have a health savings account? Is that something that you've already established or may want to consider establishing? Number 11, how should my money be invested for retirement? A lot of different options you can go with there, and one that you'd want to be paying close detail to. Number 12, what will I do in retirement? You know, I'd encourage you to set some goals. Maybe that's volunteering, maybe it's part-time work somewhere, something that you choose to do that you want to be doing and enjoy doing. Number 13, should I pay off my mortgage? Obviously, it's one where no debt is going to be ideal, but not necessarily everyone's in that position. So all great questions, and something that perhaps caught your attention, we'd love to sit down and discuss further with you.
What another great topic there, how to meet your income in retirement. Most of the time when we first meet with a couple, I mean, that's one of the first things that we're going to talk about is what's your income and what are your expenses? What do we need for income to meet those expenses? And you know, we really start with, well, what's your lifetime contractual income? What does that look like? Your Social Security payments, what are you going to get from that? Do you have a pension? Do you have any annuity payments that are paying a guaranteed monthly income for the rest of your life? And do those lifetime contractual income meet your needs, or do you have a gap there? And if there is a gap, where are we going to get that money from, right? And that's where you've saved your entire working life. You put away in that 401k or that IRA, and we're going to start drawing money from that. Oftentimes, though, people don't want to just sit around doing nothing in retirement. They might pick up a part-time job. Over in the Petoskey office, we had a client just recently. One of his goals was, well, I want to work at a golf course so I get that free golf, and it supplements his income. So the money that he would make during the summer months working at that golf course, plus his Social Security, plus his wife's Social Security, satisfied all their expense needs. So it's just important to make sure that you understand where all your income is coming from, and make sure you have a budget so you know what your expenses actually are.
Yeah, in the other segment, they talked about frequently asked questions. And I was looking at those questions and nodding my head all the way through them because I get them all the time. We get them all the time. You know, I was recently in the Cadillac office where got some of those same questions. And as we were going through the meeting, I thought to myself, you know, it's not the questions that they're asking that they have to worry about. It's the questions they're not asking that they need to worry about. I was able to bring them some questions and let them figure out, hey, what's your response going to be to that? What do you know about that? I think that's a bigger concern in your plan. So if you're sitting there and you might have had some of those similar questions, maybe you should get a second opinion from somebody that is going to help bring you questions that you haven't even thought about. And so, taking a holistic approach is so important in a good retirement plan. You can have purpose and you can have peace through learning. So if you have any questions about that, obviously give us a call. There's no obligation, no pressure ever to become a client. We get to lead by teaching. So stay tuned. Coming up next, the best question of all, when can I retire?
If you're retired or approaching retirement in the next 5 to 10 years, this event is for you. Please join us for this informative, no-cost, live event to dive deep into retirement planning. This event is all about you, the challenges you face in retirement, and the information you need to help build the future that you want. There's no pressure to become a client, and our goal is simply to give you valuable information that you can use to make smarter financial decisions. We hope by the time you leave this event, you'll be empowered to make financial decisions that will provide for your future retirement.
You can have a portfolio, or you can have a plan. You can play it safely, or you can safely plan. You can guess when to take Social Security, or you can make your decision based on detailed analysis. You can hope your savings will last your entire retirement, or you can take action and know. You can let life happen to you, or you can take control. You can go it alone, or you can have an experienced guide ready to walk with you every step of the way. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial planners serving all of Northern Michigan. Offices in Gaylord, Petoskey, Traverse City, and Cadillac. Simply call the number on your screen for a complimentary initial consultation and let us help you plan to retire well.
Your grandchildren are precious to you. They are your life. This is your time to have that special relationship. Taking care of yourself is taking care of them. Centennial Wealth Advisory is offering a free, no-obligation retirement review to make sure you don't run out of money during your retirement. Centennial Wealth Advisory. Your best is yet to come.
When can I retire? Potentially the number one question I get asked in my life, I feel like. Even out and about in the community or doing different things, people come up and say, when can I retire? I have this amount of money. Folks, it's not just a number. A lot of times I've read articles over the years or people say, if I hit X number of dollars, maybe that's $500,000, maybe it's $1 million, then I can retire. Well, maybe it depends on the people. We've had situations where folks has come into our office and they've had a smaller savings amount and their retirement has been wonderful because their needs haven't been that much. We've had situations that folks have come in with multi-million dollars and we've had to tell them that they can't retire because the money they have saved wasn't great enough for their needs. So it's not just a number when it comes to retirement. So if you're somebody that has a plan or has an idea that you want to retire at a certain age, whether that's 50, 55, 60, 65, whatever that number is, what is your plan to get there? I had a great experience just recently sitting down with some younger folks and talking through that he really had a plan. He wanted to retire. He was in a very stressful line of work and knew that his body wasn't going to hold up for all the way up to maybe more of a traditional retirement age. So they wanted to build a plan at 50. They knew they were going to have to sacrifice some financial stuff in the meantime to get to that point, but wanted to build a plan to where each year they could be working towards that. And so at 50 years old, they could pull the trigger and retire comfortably. And maybe that's not you, maybe you want to work longer, but the point of that is no matter what that point is or what that timeline, line in the sand is where you want to retire is, how are you working towards that? How are you building your income to do that? What pieces do you have in place to make sure that you're able to do that? And also, how do you want to live in retirement? You know, oftentimes one of the first questions we ask folks that come in is, what is retirement to you? What do you visualize it being? You know, some people it's just, oh, I can't wait to stop working. That's all that matters. Other folks it's, you know, I really want to travel the world, or I've never been to this place, or I've missed out on some of my grandkids' early years and I don't want to miss any more. Whatever it may be, then let's work towards that. Some things cost more money, right? If you want to golf every day at expensive golf courses, it's going to cost you more money. And other things aren't as much. But when can you retire? Depends. That's why it's so important to sit down. We love to give people that second opinion or even your first opinion if you haven't talked through that yet, and walk through the various steps of what this looks like and having a plan where you can feel comfortable and confident working those later years of your career, heading into retirement and knowing it's going to be everything that you hoped and dreamed it would be.
When can I retire? It's one of the most common questions that we get. And what we find is it's a simple question. It's a much more difficult answer the closer you get to it. You know, big problems from a long ways away, the solution looks simple. The closer you get to the problem, the more complicated the solution becomes often. And I think that's similar when it comes to when can I retire? Well, it depends. And I know in the Cadillac office, I have seen the whole gamut. I've had clients come in and they'd ask the question and we would go through all of our different filters. We'd run them through our process, that holistic plan, looking at all the pros and cons of their options. And the answer sometimes was, you know, your goals and what you're trying to accomplish, you need to work a little bit more. Sometimes it's, hey, you can retire right now. Those are always fun to have those kind of conversations. And then sometimes you might find that you have people that have just had their head down working, making good decisions, and all of a sudden they lift their head up and they go get some financial help and some financial advice, and they might find like, yeah, you could have retired a couple years ago. So if you're in that position where you're just unsure, it doesn't hurt to plan early. There's no pressure, and you can figure stuff out about how and when you're going to retire. And the last thing I would say about when you can retire, have a purpose. Think about what your purpose in retirement is going to look like. Have that cash flow contentment. You might find that you can retire a lot sooner than maybe planned. I know you had some
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple come in. They were very hesitant to meet with a financial advisor because they just thought they would never be able to retire. We went through their situation, dove into all those details, and he was really wanting to retire as soon as possible. But because of his situation and his income needs early in retirement, it made the most sense for him to work another year and a half. You see, what was going on is he was visiting his mother down in another state, traveling thousands of miles every year, and those expenses were adding up. Eventually, she's going to move back to his location here in Michigan, and his expenses would drop. So that helps him plan. He knows, hey, my expenses are going to go down. That point in time would be the best time for him to retire. So hopefully you found all this information in this segment valuable. Tune in next week, same time, same place, lots more great information out there for you to capture.